I think we ran a little bit late and I can still see people kind of wandering in, so I'm going to give us like a couple more minutes before we get started. But like while we're waiting for people to wander in, I just want to get an idea of who we've got in the room. So can I just get like a quick show of hands? Is this you? Are you a Java person? All right, yeah. Not as many as I thought there would be, given that this is like, isn't it this conference organized by Java? Yeah. All right, what about C#.NET? Who's here to defend? Oh, excellent. I'm looking forward to this so much. JavaScript, TypeScript. All right, keep your hand up. Right, put your hands back up, JavaScript developers. Now keep your hand up if you use it on the back end as well. So not just a front end developer. Okay, cool. So we've got a few. I'm sorry. Not really. Anyone who's like one of the unsexy languages? Yes, my people. I love it. I'm not alone. Just shout out. What are you? Like what languages? PHP? Ah, my people. Python? Yeah, cool. Done a bit of Python. Anything else? Ruby? Yeah. I think we've got the trifecta there. Anything else? We've got Rust? No? Go? No? C++? Is Carl here? No? Cool. All right, anything else that I haven't covered already? All right, cool. So we've got a bit of a split in the room today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and why I decided to give this talk. Hopefully, I'm not going to offend anyone too much. My name is Jo Minney. I come from Perth, Western Australia. This is what it looks like in Perth, Western Australia. There's a lot of dirt. It's also really, really big. You can fit 59 Greases into Australia, and we have only about twice as many people as you do. So you could double the population of Greece, that's us, and then we have 59 times as much space. And my job used to be moving that dirt that we saw before around as fast as possible on conveyor belts, making sure that it wasn't too wet. And if you just thought to yourself, wow, that sounds like the most boring job in existence, it was, and that's why I don't do it anymore. And I did get to play with a lot of data and that sort of thing. My job was as a process engineer, but ultimately it wasn't very fulfilling, and I found myself repeatedly hitting walls every time I tried to use anything that wasn't Microsoft Excel. So I left that career, and I got a desk at a local co-working space. This is my co-working space here, some of my besties. That's my cat. She's gorgeous. Her name's Lol. And I sat at my home office, and I started consulting as an engineer. And in a weird turn of events, only a few years later, I found myself running a web agency, building websites for other consultants, because it turns out that I enjoyed web development way more than process engineering, and building my own website was a bit of a gateway drug for me. And today, nearly 10 years later, my husband and I run a software agency specializing in building web applications for cause-driven organizations, and that's going to be important later. My husband has been a software developer for most of his adult life, and like many young people who know that that's what they want to do from a young age, he went to university, he studied software engineering, and he studied Java, and he studied .NET, and somewhere along the way, he decided that he didn't want to work in enterprise, and so he kind of landed in the PHP ecosystem. And when I first started considering development as a career, his lived experiences were a major influence, but I also had a close relationship with a local women in coding organisation called She Codes Australia, where I was regularly exposed to a range of other languages and frameworks. This is a bunch of the mentors at one of our workshops. So we teach a range of different languages, and we have a full stack bootcamp that lasts for 6 months that's all led by industry. So all of our mentors are people who are working in industry, they're paid for their time, and the people that go through our bootcamps are women who are looking to upskill, a lot of the times from the companies that are sponsoring the bootcamp. So they will purchase a place in the bootcamp, and then they will send their QA people or their administration staff or something like that to upskill, learn how to become developers or at least get started, and then they'll go and put them into a development team and train them up on the job. It's really rewarding, and I've now been volunteering and working with She Codes for nearly 10 years, And through conference speaking, I've also become really good friends with people in pretty much every development ecosystem out there. And the one thing that I've noticed is that universally, we all hate something. So for your entertainment, I've collected some of the most common complaints and gripes and memes about a bunch of different languages. And obviously, because this is a conference that is organized by Java, that's where I'm going to start. So I asked this question, unironically, in a bunch of different communities that I'm a part of, should I learn Java, just to see what people would say. And admittedly, my goal here was a little bit just to shit stir and see what people would come up with. So I asked in PHP communities, I asked in .NET communities, I asked in bootcamp communities, I asked in startup communities. And this is some of the feedback that I got. But first, I did promise memes. I had a lot of help putting together these first few slides because I am not a Java developer and I'm not a .NET developer. But I know lots of people who are really great at what they do, and they've helped me with some of the technical stuff here. So this particular one is courtesy of Marit, who is currently giving a talk in another room about how delightful Java is. If you want to go and learn about it later, you can watch that. But there's Java cops a lot of flack from people, and this is the very first thing that someone said when I was like, right, why is Java bad? What don't you like about it? And they're like, Tomcat, need I say more? I was like, actually, yes, because I don't know what Tomcat is, because I'm not a Java developer. And so they did elaborate on that, and this is what they said. It's gross, bloated, the Tomcat server is a bitch to work with, and everything just feels 10 times more convoluted than you think it should be for no apparent good trade-off. So I put this to my friends who work in Java, who are, you might want to say, Java advocates. And the first thing that they said was, well, we don't really use Tomcat directly anymore because now we use Spring Boot, and it's just kind of rolled in, so it's like a non-issue. That's not really a complaint that makes sense in 2026. And yes, Java is verbose compared to a lot of other languages. It still tends to favor explicit structure over terseness. But in practice, the old endless boilerplate criticism is much less real, much less true than it used to be. And I'll explain a little bit about that in a moment. Java was designed and it evolved for readability, predictability, and maintainability, particularly in large code bases. More ceremony means more consistency and safer refactoring at scale, which is great for long-lived systems. And that is historically where we've mostly seen Java being used. Generics are just shit in Java. Okay, cool. But generics provide strong compile time safety, and they were added in a way that preserved backward compatibility for huge ecosystems. Build tools, maybe not the nicest. So I think this is coming back to Tomcat. Maybe there's still a little way to go with things there, but the build tools in Java are optimized for scale and reproducibility more than they're aimed at simplicity. Right? It's not the easiest thing to work with, but I am assured that they are powerful and mature, and that they're not built to delight, but that Java developers can handle that, right? So I think there is a little aspect of like, yeah, but we don't need it to be easy because we're Java developers there. Maybe a little bit of that going on, but they can handle it when the trade-off is strong dependency management, reproducible builds, and flexibility for large projects. No auto properties. This one was actually, I found really interesting because I didn't know what auto properties were. So I had to learn that, and then I had to learn about why they don't have them in Java and what they have instead. And what I discovered is that recently records were introduced. I'm not sure how recent it is now, but Marit and my friend Adele both assure me that records reduce DTO boilerplate a lot, and particularly for classes that are mainly data carriers. And also this quote exactly from my friend Adele, who I'm going to mention a little bit more in a moment. Also, IDEs have been able to auto-gen that shit for almost 2 decades, so who cares? So it might be a legitimate criticism, but also, is it really a thing that's holding back Java? This one I quite enjoyed. This came off of a Reddit thread. These were quotes from actual people, by the way. They're either off of like forums or from people that I know directly. And this one in particular I really like this because the criticism came from someone in the .NET community, and I'm pretty sure that you guys just do the same thing, but with square brackets. So, people in glass houses. And in terms of the ecosystem, so there's a lot of criticism getting thrown out there around, like, feels like it's in 2010, and I would argue that, like, maybe it's not the ecosystem that's stuck in 2010. Maybe it's your organization or team. Maybe it's because you haven't taken advantage of the fact that the Java platform does really strongly value backwards compatibility. And this is a criticism of any framework where projects are long-lived, and most Java projects are designed to be long-lived. Upgrading is stressful, regardless of what language you're in, and often teams just don't do it. So perhaps if you feel like it's a 2010 language, it's because you're still using the 2010 version. And as for the link and iQueryability stuff, I was like, all right, this one's probably fairish. But then my Java developer friends were like, okay, but also Java doesn't have Link's fully language integrated query model because of type erased generics. So a C# style expression-based approach is a bit less natural. And Java evolved towards streams and framework level query abstractions instead. So it's not they don't have this and that's bad, it's that they don't have this because they chose something else. And as for async and await, virtual threads solved that problem in a different way. So I think what I'm getting at here is there's a lot of criticism being thrown at Java, and there's a lot of reasons why that criticism might not be a valid reason not to use it. So let's have a look at .NET. And obviously, what's the #1 meme that we're going to have for .NET? It's .NET is just Microsoft Java. Someone said this to me at the speaker dinner last night, and I cackled because I already had this slide on there. And my favorite comment on the Reddit thread where I pulled this from was, this post's comments are a war zone between people who have never used C# and people who have never updated past Java 6. And I really do think that that is a big part of why there is so much criticism flying back and forth between these communities. So in response to C# is just Microsoft's Java, I would say, yeah, kind of, but also no, but also yes. And a great way to kind of understand how these two languages are linked together is a talk I mentioned to my friend Adele before. Adele Carpenter has a great talk called Java Sucks, so C# doesn't have to. It's on YouTube in a bunch of places, and I'm linking to it at the end if you want to check out and take a photo of the resources slide. And she had a great comment in that talk. Reified generics in C# are a thing of beauty, and they're wonderfully engineered. They are also a wonderful example of the second mover advantage and the benefit of having a single corporate overlord, because it is something that's really good in .NET, and it's something that Java didn't have because it didn't fit with the way that the Java community had decided to develop the language. The next criticism, it's for boomer enterprise development. Too much ceremony for agile startups. I got this extensive list of reasons why my .NET friends were like, that is wrong. Look at all of the wonderful things that .NET has. We've got minimal APIs, they're beautiful. We've got top-level programs. Dependency injection is built in. I can see some people nodding. They're like, yes, that's my .NET, right? They've got good CLI tooling. They've got fast project scaffolding. That's great for startups, right? Performance is excellent, sustainability is good, they've got great IDE support across pretty much every platform now, and a really mature ecosystem. So maybe this criticism isn't as valid as it was 10 or 15 years ago. I don't want to move into a Windows environment. I'm not going to move out of Linux, I'm not going to move out of Mac. I prefer to stay in open source environments. Well, modern .NET is fully open source, and I think .NET Core was made fully open source in 2016, so everything since then has been fully open source, is my understanding. And JetBrains Rider IDE is a really popular choice that's cross-platform. You can develop in .NET on any machine, and you can deploy it on pretty much anything as well. So it's just not really a valid argument anymore. It definitely used to be. Hosting is expensive and deployment is painful. I don't want to be tied to Azure, me either. But you can also go and have a look at Microsoft Docs, and all the way back since ASP.NET Core, they've had documentation on the official Microsoft website on how to deploy on Linux. So again, you don't have to use Azure, you're not tied into that anymore with .NET. Just because it is what's commonly done in enterprise doesn't mean that you have to do that. C# has no place on the front end. Stop trying to make web things in C#. I think this one people feel very strongly about. Even some C# developers feel really strongly about it. And like, I get it, because if you are a front-end developer and someone's like, I can do that, but in C#, and you're like, but why? I love CSS, and I love HTML, and I love JavaScript, and I don't want you to ruin it with your C# because you're not a front-end developer and you shouldn't have that power. And like, I get it, guys, I get it, because I'm a front-end developer myself, and I don't want people in C# coming and pretending to be front-end developers, but also, that's not what it's for. That's not what things like Blazor are for. They're made to fill a gap. If you've got an entire team that all you have is C# developers, right? And you want to be able to have, say, an interface that is like predominantly maybe an internal tool or something like that. You don't want to have to hire an entire JavaScript team just to be able to support it, or get stuck with something that isn't interactive and doesn't give you the same reactivity that you would get from most modern frameworks. So things like Blazor fill a gap. Who hurt you? You don't have to use it. Like, no one's saying that because you use C#, you have to use Blazor or Razor or any of the other Azer things that you've got in C#, where you're trying to squeeze it into the front end. There's probably someone that it's a right fit for. I'll admit it's a bit confusing trying to understand the history of .NET, because you'll change your mind about what it's called more often than you change your underpants, but so does Java. And so does PHP, and so does pretty much every other major framework, because .NET history isn't that much different from any other framework. Most languages go through this. They go through phases, they go through naming changes, and they go through restructures. It's very normal. And I think Adele summed it up really well in her talk. She said, if you spend enough time in both worlds, it's painfully obvious that we're all basically the same. We shouldn't be fighting. Java and .NET, that is. We should be uniting against our common enemy, those who believe that JavaScript belongs on the server. That's not quite the message that I want you to take away today, but it did make me laugh. Can we all just agree to stop running JavaScript on servers and C# in browsers? This was a quote again from Adele, and I was like, why, Adele? Like, always? Are you saying that there's never a reason where it's the best choice? Like, you don't think it should exist at all? Or are you just saying that you don't like it and you don't want to use it? Because those are two very different things. JavaScript on the server, it's pretty good at like IO-bound tasks, but CPU-intensive operations can block the entire application. This is the argument that we get a lot about back-end JavaScript. You can isolate CPU work nowadays using things like worker threads or child processes, clustering, separate services. It's definitely not as big a problem as it used to be. Do I think it's the best fit for everything? Absolutely not. Do I want to use it? Do I want to work in it? No, not really. Doesn't mean I don't, but I don't really want to. This one, NPM dependency hell, the NPM ecosystem in general, the JavaScript ecosystem in general is a bit messy. Has anyone ever been to a conference where the Line Breakers have been playing? They're like we've got a couple up the back there. They're a parody band. They do like tech parodies of popular songs, and they've got one to Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire, but it's like, let's build another framework. And it started because they wanted to see if they could get through that entire song just listing JavaScript frameworks, and they got about halfway before they had to start including other languages. And like, I get it, that is pretty hard to defend, right? That particular thing is hard for me to defend because there have been a lot of problems with NPM lately, but there are other package managers out there for JavaScript. And the truth is that it's actually really easy to hire JavaScript developers, experienced JavaScript developers. And if you're a startup and being able to hire cheap and fast is really important to you, maybe JavaScript is a good fit. It's also great having a community that you can rely on, and the JavaScript community is huge, right? They have bigger forums, they have like more people out there making YouTube content and people who are actively participating in their communities than most other languages do. They also very much don't have the same stigma around things like boot camps and self-taught developership that a lot of other communities are often guilty of. And you might think that this is a bad thing because maybe people who have come out of boot camps don't belong in development, but I would say, why are we gatekeeping it? What are they doing to hurt you? Because they're building things that you're probably not going to work on. They're not looking at working in an enterprise environment. Most of those people are out there working on startups or their own personal projects, or maybe they're working on something where it's just they need something that is really sexy, really interactive, where the front end is way more important than the back end. And really their back end is just like a database, storing a bunch of data, maybe some authentication stuff. Why do you need more than that? What's wrong with them using JavaScript on the server? Just like Java and C#, it's not the right fit for everything. But that doesn't make it a bad fit for everything either. So the reason that we're all here is because PHP is dead. It's the title of my slide. This is actually the first time I've ever done a clickbait talk, which is really exciting for me. So it clearly worked, because some of you are still here. But my favorite quote that I came across while I was doing research for this talk is this one here. I have been hearing that PHP is dead for over 20 years and counting. Soon, PHP's ghost will be old enough to drink. This was 2 years ago, so actually good news. PHP's ghost can come out drinking with us tonight. It's now old enough to drink in pretty much every country. And look, it's a thing that we've been hearing forever. It's a thing I've heard for as long as I've been part of the PHP community. This is a quote that I pulled from an article which clearly very unbiased by the name of the blog, which is javascript.plainenglish.io. The article is called "PHP is Dead and Nobody Wants to Admit It." And he said, "This is a language in terminal decline and everyone except PHP developers seems to know it." And like, I don't know, because I don't know if you guys heard about this, but Excel just invested $57 million into Laravel. So that doesn't, to me, seem like a thing that's going to disappear anytime soon. There is a thriving community around PHP. Laravel is a fantastic platform, and it solves a lot of the problems that people had with PHP 10 or 15 years ago. Also from this same article, PHP's ubiquity is actually a hostage situation orchestrated by shared hosting providers. And when I put this in one of my PHP community groups, I got this meme back, which I thought was beautiful. And also someone said, hostage situation, do you mean like trying to use Next.js without Vercel? You can literally just put PHP anywhere and it will work. That's kind of why it became so popular. And that's what happened. Shared hosting became popular because there was so much demand for it, because you could just take PHP code, you could put it on a server, and it would work. And that might have meant that they ended up with a lot of bad code out there because it was so easy for people to write PHP. But it also meant that the platforms just kept getting bigger and bigger, the usage kept getting bigger and bigger, and it still runs about 70% of the internet. PHP applications are synonymous with security vulnerabilities. Look, kind of. It has for a very long time. There has been a problem because the PHP community didn't take security seriously, particularly people who are developing in vanilla PHP, and particularly in a lot of the communities that grew up around frameworks that were built on PHP. And I think you all know where I'm going here. WordPress is one of the reasons why the PHP community continues to exist. And WordPress has a lot to answer for. It did democratize publishing, but it also is responsible for a lot of the security vulnerabilities that exist on the internet. But the thing is that WordPress core is not actually responsible for those vulnerabilities. It's pretty well maintained, it's pretty secure, and you would be hard-pressed to find a security vulnerability in WordPress core before the maintainers or someone in the community who is actively looking for these things and fixing them before they become a problem. WordPress core is not the problem. WordPress ecosystem, on the other hand, where anyone can install any plugin or any theme, and those plugins and themes don't have to be vetted by anyone. You can just go to someone's website and download it. Downloading through the repository is not the only way. Even if you are downloading from the repository, once something is up there, it doesn't continually get security vetted, so it's relying on the community to report something. It's definitely worse than NPM. But again, I would say that WordPress also made development accessible to a lot of people, and the reason the internet looks the way it does today is because of platforms like that. Having said that, do I like working with it? Absolutely not. I have unfortunately had to in the past, but it has a place, and if someone came to me and they needed a website and I thought that WordPress was the best choice for them, I'd probably still recommend it. Keeping on the security theme, Laravel now gives you SQL injection mitigation, cross-site scripting prevention, CSRF protection. All of these things are out of the box with the Laravel platform, the Laravel framework. And you also get at least 2, I think maybe there's 3 now, comprehensive authentication systems to choose from. That, like, you literally just, during the install, you just choose which authentication system you want. So when you start a fresh project, you just have authentication. It's excellent, and it works really well. You have things like 2-factor authentication and OAuth built into it as well. You don't have to roll your own authentication. It's delightful. So security in Laravel and security in modern PHP is a very different landscape from what it looked like 10 years ago, and it's a very different landscape from, you know, WordPress websites that are out there that haven't been updated in 5 years. All right, fine, our syntax is not great. PHP syntax, that is, because, again, I don't actually code in PHP, really. I code in Laravel, and it's very much, it's a different thing. It's something that has taken a lot of the ugly syntax out of it and made it a delight to work with. First of all, we don't use the equals equals. Like, it's not really a problem because we just don't use the other one. This is the only one that we use. We also have scalar type hints, return types, typed properties, union types, enums, read-only properties, attributes, and we have Larastan, which I can just install on my project, even if it's a 10-year-old project running an older version. I can progressively upgrade. I can set the weighting to 1. It will go through and pick up anything that's going to, like, immediately break my project, and then I can progressively move up the rank until I get it all the way to extreme strict typing. For new projects, the standard is to just strict type everything anyway. Modern PHP, or Laravel, because that is what most PHP developers are turning to nowadays, is a structured, expressive, and convention-driven language. And the last thing is just about testing. So this comment actually did make me mad, because I was like, excuse me, have you seen Pest? It's delightful. So if you haven't seen it before, Pest is built on top of PHP Unit, which is already a fairly mature testing engine. And it was designed with developer experience in mind. If you are a PHP developer and you're not using Pest, you are doing it wrong, because it's so good. And just to give you an example, like, here's a simple test. Like, it's so readable. It's so lovely. Right? This is just a regular test, but, like, let's look at something even more exciting, is that we now have Playwright integration. So in, like, 5 lines, I can create a user in the database memory. So we're just using like SQLite or something here. We're developing it using a factory. And then doing a Playwright browser test, which visits the website in Chromium, so this bit here, visits the website in Chromium, does all of those steps, goes through the whole thing of, like, checking to make sure that you can see the sign-in, reset your password, asserts that the confirmation message is correct, and that there are no JavaScript errors in the console, and asserts inside the same test in PHP that the actual email was sent. And it's like 5 lines of code. So imagine what these browser tests would look like if you were doing them directly in Playwright. Like, the PHP testing environment is actually a delight, and I will fight you on that. And that's kind of the problem. Because outdated doesn't mean unfounded. And what we as developers are often guilty of is making these things part of our identity. And nobody is out there undervaluing your lived experience by challenging some of the assumptions that you made. Who's seen this meme before? Is it a 6 or a 9? Hands up for 6. Hands up for 9. Who thinks that we don't have enough information to tell one way or the other? Who thinks that there probably is a right answer? Yeah, one person. I mean, now who thinks that there is probably a right answer? Yeah, right? Sometimes you have to be able to admit that once you've got all of the information, once you've got all of the context, your argument loses traction, right? And I think that is the first thing, is that as developers, it's really easy to just, like, lock ourselves in and go, no, but I'm right because I know my language really well, and so obviously my point of view is the most important one. And it's a dangerous place to be in. So why is bias dangerous? Does anyone recognize these 3 logos? Call out if you know what they are. Yeah? Netscape, yeah. What's the second one? The smiley face? Friendster? Does anyone remember Friendster? And the third one is Dig. I mean, that one kind of gives it away in the logo, but all three of these are examples of where a rewrite in a new language basically destroyed the entire platform. Yes, admittedly, in the Netscape case, there were other factors that impacted that because of the whole Microsoft situation there. But Netscape already had a big community around it and probably would have continued to exist for a lot longer if it wasn't for the fact that they decided that they were going to wipe the entire thing and rewrite it in a different language. And the general consensus out there in the development community is that the only really good reason to rewrite something is because the technology stack itself is genuinely obsolete. And I'm not talking about incremental improvements. I'm not talking about building on what you've already got and modernizing it. I'm talking about scrapping it and rewriting entirely in a different language. Don't do it just because it's unfashionable. Do it because it's unsupported. Do it because there's no security patches, or there's no ecosystem, or you can't hire developers, and you know that the end is in sight if you don't make a change. They're good reasons to do it, but I would still argue that you can probably attempt it in a way that's like introducing microservices or something like that that allows you to progressively do it without stopping feature development on your existing project. And one of the resources that spurred me to write this talk in the first place is an article by a guy named Steve, and I'm almost definitely going to pronounce his name wrong. It's either Frankia or Francia. If anyone knows, please tell me. Steve has been the creator, architect, and leader at various points in his career of a bunch of different really well-known platforms, including leading 6 of the largest open source projects over the past 25 years: Go, Docker, Hugo, MongoDB, Drupal, and Cobra. And he defined Google's open source strategy, and he has an extraordinary breadth of knowledge across a range of systems, languages, and frameworks. And his article, titled "Why Engineers Can't Be Rational About Programming Languages," Steve talks about several examples in his career where he watched successful companies get run into the ground because tech decisions were made based on emotion rather than logic. In Queensland, which is a state in Australia, we had a payroll system that cost Queensland, it was called Queensland Health, and it cost $1.25 billion to rewrite it in a new language, and then it didn't work when it was launched. Hertz paid Accenture $32 million for a website that was built on some Adobe framework that none of them had ever used because some guy was like, yeah, this is probably the right choice. That website was never delivered, and now they're in an ongoing court battle. Doing rewrites for emotional reasons is really dangerous. So how do we avoid the trap? When an identity-based belief is challenged, the brain responds as if you are under physical attack. The amygdala, which is the part of your brain that controls your threat detection system, is the same system that fires when you encounter a predator in the wild or a physical danger, and it activates immediately. So I am sure that for most of you, something on one of those earlier slides about your chosen framework made you feel a bit uncomfortable, and you were like, oh, I kind of want to fight someone right now, right? And that reaction is normal. And unfortunately, for a lot of developers, their primary language choice is part of their identity. And what we know is the more strongly that beliefs are tied to our identity, the harder it is to change our minds. For developers, which framework or which language we're working in often slots in somewhere near our opinions on gun control and the benefits of education for the general public. And in his article, Steve summed it up really nicely. The moment you hire a Rust developer to evaluate languages, you've already chosen Rust. You've just added a $2 million feasibility study to make the predetermined decision feel rational. So how do we avoid the trap? Well, here's 4 ways that I can think of. And the first is be aware of your bias. And hopefully after today, you are a little bit more aware of your biases and maybe some of the misconceptions you had about some of the other popular frameworks that are out there. Force yourself outside of your comfort zone. Go volunteer at a boot camp or a kid's coding thing or something. Learn about languages that aren't your normal language. Go to a meetup that's not a language that you normally code in and find out what's cool and sexy in their community right now. Get yourself outside of your comfort zone. Hang out with people and start to learn that they are actually people, not just PHP developers. force yourself to do something that does feel a little bit uncomfortable. Start to challenge those things so that they become a little bit less of your identity. And if you can't be unbiased about something, if that's not an option for you, and you know that this is part of your identity and you can't see it clearly, get someone else to help you make the decision. Don't be making important, expensive decisions that you are going to not be able to do in an unbiased way. And lastly, consider all of the factors, not just the language or framework. And I get asked a lot why I work in PHP when I know that there's other languages out there that might be a better fit for something. And the answer is, for us, they're not a better fit. Because I don't know if you remember, does anyone remember who my customers are? They're charities. Do you know what charities all universally have in common? They don't have any money. That's kind of the point. They give it all away. So they do get money, but most of their money is coming from things like grants, and it's a lot easier for them to get funding for projects than it is for them to get funding for things that are operational. So expensive hosting or deployment strategies, or even just the ability to be able to hire an enterprise developer at a whim, those are things that are not viable for charities. So for them, PHP is the best choice. It is something that works really well for them, and because that's what I want to do with my life, I want to work with charities, it's a good choice for us as well. Plus, I actually just really like Laravel. It's a fun platform to work with. I personally am not a huge fan of JavaScript in general. I'm coming around to TypeScript, and when we rebranded recently, we had to make a decision about what we were going to use for our website. And I also have fallen into the trap of being like, we shouldn't use JavaScript on the server because I'm a PHP developer and that's just not what we do. But you know what? Next.js was the best choice for us. And so we did. We installed Next.js and that's what we used for our website because it was easy, it was fast, and for us, performance was really important. We could have gone with WordPress. I think Next.js was a better choice, personally. We didn't need content maintainability, we just needed performance, and we needed it to look really sexy. Now, I'm going to leave you with one last quote from Adele. She's also Australian, by the way. Her accent is just as delightful as mine. So please do go and watch her talk. The quote is, "Let's not get emotional about the best way to tell a computer what to do." Here's some resources. Adele's talk's there. There's also a talk by a friend of mine, Stephen Rees-Carter, called In Defense of PHP. He is an ethical hacker, and he spent a long time working in the PHP space. Now he does it as a consultant. He's got some great talks out there, but this one in particular goes into some of the commonly held misconceptions around PHP in the security space. Why engineers can't be rational about programming languages, the article that I talked about by Steve. And PHP is the right tool for the job for all the wrong reasons, which is a great little thought piece from 10 years ago that's super relevant still from one of my friends in the PHP space. I want to say thank you to these people. They all helped with a lot of the technical stuff. Any mistakes about the languages are my own, not their fault, so please don't attack them if I made a mistake about Java or .NET. I've never coded a project in it. I've only ever dabbled a little bit, and I don't understand those projects deeply. So this was really fun for me to be able to get out of my comfort zone and learn a little bit. And hopefully you guys learned something too. Now, I think we're out of time, because I've gone a little bit over. But if you have questions for me, you can either come up and hit me now, or scan that QR code. It will take you to Slido. You can pop it in there, and I will reply. I also have another talk later on today about something completely different. So if you want to come and catch me in person and you don't get me after the talk, then also happy to chat then. Thanks for coming to my talk, everyone. I hope you had something good out of it.